I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine the absolute ultimate solo trip.
Okay.
You've just arrived at this gorgeous tucked-away boutique inn, right? There's a roaring fireplace in the lobby.
Oh, that sounds ideal.
Right. And your entire itinerary for the next week is completely up to you. And it consists, like, almost exclusively of food.
The best kind of trip.
Seriously. We are talking daily, uninterrupted visits to local cheese shops, family-run bakeries, bustling farmers markets. There's zero compromising.
Right. No arguing with a travel partner over whether to go to a museum or a cafe.
Exactly. Just pure, unadulterated freedom.
Yeah, I mean, the true appeal of traveling alone is that every single decision, from the destination right down to the daily schedule, belongs completely to you. It is entirely your vision.
The appeal is undeniably huge. But beneath that highly romanticized ideal of, wandering the globe by yourself, there is this crucial factor that we tend to overlook when we are blinded by wanderlust: personal safety. Because when you are the only one making the decisions, you are also the only one looking out for your own well-being.
Right.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is tackling this head-on. We are unpacking a brand new 2026 report from the travel insurance comparison company, SquareMouth.
It's a really comprehensive piece of research.
It really is. They just crunched a massive amount of data to determine the absolute safest and, on the flip side, the most dangerous countries for solo travelers right now. So we are going to explore the surprising data behind these destinations and equip you with some indispensable pro tips for your next solo adventure.
The data in this report is full of surprises, honestly. The definition of a safe country means much, much more than just a place where you can avoid getting your wallet stolen.
Right.
Taking a cold, hard look at the realities of global travel is essential before you ever book a flight, because knowledge is most valuable when it's actually applied on the ground.
Definitely. So before we reveal these ultimate travel destinations, I want to look at how safety is actually being measured here.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, because when you or I talk about a place feeling safe, we're usually talking about a subjective vibe,
Yeah.
like a well-lit street, friendly locals.
A feeling, yeah.
Right. But this report moves us from subjective feelings to hard, objective data. Looking at the methodology, I noticed SquareMouth didn't just conduct some generic poll.
No, they went deep.
They really did. They analyzed 113 countries, and they started by ranking them based on the United Nations Human Development Index, and then they layered in the Global Peace Index.
Right.
But let's not gloss over those terms, right? What are we actually measuring when we use those indexes as a baseline?
Well, think of the Human Development Index as a measure of human potential and societal foundation. It tracks things like life expectancy, access to education, and just the general standard of living.
Okay.
So it tells us how well a country essentially provides for its citizens. Then the Global Peace Index, on the other hand, measures the absence of violence and the fear of violence.
The absence of violence.
Exactly. It looks at internal conflict, military expenditure, and just overall societal safety.
So they take those massive global indexes, right?
Yeah.
And then they zoom in on specific factors that are relevant to a traveler.
They do. They looked at crime rates, obviously.
Sure.
But they also measured perceived security when walking alone at night. And crucially, they factored in healthcare availability.
That's a big one.
Huge. And what they did was they normalized the rankings for each of those factors so they could be compared equally across the board and then scored them on a scale from 0 to 10.
Okay, 0 to 10.
Yeah, and they averaged those numbers out to get one single score for each country, where lower scores indicate a safer country, while higher scores mean it's more dangerous.
I assume they just ranked crime rates and called it a day. But factoring in healthcare availability is, frankly, an absolute game changer.
It really is.
It makes me think of this 0 to 10 scale, almost like a comprehensive credit score, but for a country's overall well-being.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. Like your financial credit score isn't just based on one single transaction you made yesterday. It's a holistic view of your financial stability over time.
Your payment history, your credit utilization.
Exactly. The age of your accounts, all of that.
Yeah.
And this safety index is doing the exact same thing for a nation. It's combining the crime rate with the medical infrastructure and the psychological peace of mind of the citizens, all to give you a true picture of the country's foundational stability.
What's fascinating here is how that holistic approach completely redefines safety for a solo traveler. Because safety isn't merely the absence of an active threat, right?
Right.
If you fall ill, or if you, say, trip on an uneven cobblestone street and break your ankle.
Which happens.
It happens a lot. Safety is knowing that the local infrastructure is robust enough to catch you. When you don't have a companion there to help navigate the local medical system or translate at a pharmacy, the strength of that infrastructure is essentially your primary safety net.
That makes total sense. We do need to offer a vital caveat, though, before we look at the winners.
Yes, absolutely.
This report, as rigorous as the grading rubric is ultimately a snapshot in time. A generically safe score on a spreadsheet doesn't guarantee universal safety for every single individual.
No, it doesn't.
A country that the data deems safe might still present very real, very specific challenges for certain groups of people, particularly women, minorities, or travelers who identify as LGBTQ++ people. You always have to layer your own personal context over the general data.
The baseline data gives you a starting point, right? Not a guarantee. But even with that in mind, looking at the countries that scored the best, the results are genuinely eye-opening.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. When I first opened this report, I was expecting the traditional heavyweights. I was fully anticipating Japan or maybe Iceland taking the crown for solo traveler safety.
Sure, those are the usual suspects.
Right. But the #1 safest country in the world, according to this massive data set, is San Marino. San Marino. Which is a place a lot of people might not even realize is an independent nation.
It frequently flies under the radar, but San Marino achieved a near-perfect score of 0.78 out of 10.
Wow.
0.78.
Yeah, and for some geographical context, it is a super small mountainous microstate that's entirely landlocked and surrounded by Italy.
Okay.
And the reasons for its stellar safety record map perfectly to the methodology we just discussed. It has incredibly reliable healthcare, it has very low environmental risks, and its rates of personal safety are literally off the charts.
Really?
Yeah. Almost 90% of the San Marinese people report feeling completely safe when they're out alone after dark.
90%. I mean, a 0.78 is essentially a perfect credit score in our analogy, and a 90% nighttime security rating is staggering.
It's almost unheard of.
Now, looking at the rest of the top tier, there is a distinct regional trend. It heavily favors Europe.
Across the pond, yeah.
Right. And instead of reading down the entire spreadsheet, the standout runner-up is Andorra, coming in at #2 with a score of 1.33.
Another small nation.
Exactly. And then you have Singapore taking the #3 spot at 1.56, which is really telling. We are seeing smaller, highly developed nations, San Marino, Andorra, Singapore, just dominating the top of this list.
Why do you think that is?
Sociologically, this makes perfect sense. Smaller populations and tight-knit communities naturally correlate with higher perceived nighttime security because the social cohesion is just stronger.
Right. Everybody kind of knows everybody, or at least the community ties are tighter.
Exactly. Furthermore, managing the logistics of a high-quality healthcare infrastructure is fundamentally more streamlined in a highly developed microstate than it is across a massive, sprawling continent.
A smaller footprint means tighter community control and highly managed infrastructure.
Right.
That tracks.
Yeah.
But your point earlier about this data being a snapshot in time, that becomes incredibly apparent when we look a little further down the list.
Well, yes, the anomalies.
Right. I noticed Qatar ranks #6 on this SquareMouth index.
#6 globally.
Yeah, and it boasts a phenomenal safety score of 1.84. So according to this spreadsheet, it is a remarkably safe place with excellent infrastructure.
On paper, yes.
But the reality on the ground right now tells a completely different story.
And this is where the credit score analogy needs an update. Because a financial credit score takes months or even years of bad decisions to ruin, right?
Yeah.
But a country's safety index can plummet literally overnight. Currently, due to the ongoing war with Iran that has been spreading across the Middle East, the U.S. State Department has placed Qatar at a level 3 travel advisory.
Which is serious. Level 3 out of 4 means reconsider travel.
Right.
The explicit recommendation from the State Department is that due to the current situation, you should not jet off to this Persian Gulf locale right now, solo or otherwise.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates the inherent danger of treating lagging data as absolute gospel.
Yeah.
Insurance data looks at the historical foundation, the long-term global peace index, the established medical facilities, but sudden political unrest, environmental disasters, or armed conflicts spreading across a region, those things invalidate those foundational scores instantly.
Instantaneously, yeah.
The hospital might be world-class, but if the airspace is closed due to conflict, the country is no longer safe for a tourist.
So what does this all mean? I guess it's like the insurance data tells you if the house was built with good bones.
Okay, I like that.
But the U.S. State Department advisories give you the real-time weather report. It tells you if a hurricane is hitting that solidly built house today.
Yes, precisely.
If you want to stay safe, checking both before booking a trip isn't optional. Qatar shows us how a safe infrastructure can be threatened by an outside geopolitical storm. But what happens to a solo traveler when the infrastructure itself struggles to function on a daily basis?
That takes us to the absolute bottom of this list.
Right. Let's flip the coin.
The contrast is stark. The #1 most dangerous country for solo travelers right now is Venezuela, which carries a staggering score of 9.74 out of 10.
Wow. I mean, San Marino was 0.78. Venezuela is nearly a perfect 10 for danger.
It's completely the other end of the spectrum. The risks for solo travelers venturing into Venezuela are multifaceted. The general safety picture is quite bleak due to rampant violent crime, kidnapping, terrorism, and civil unrest.
It's a lot to navigate.
It is. And just like Qatar, Venezuela sits at a level 3 advisory from the State Department, but for entirely internal reasons. Beyond the threat of violence, the data points to severely poor infrastructure and severely limited healthcare options.
Now, the regional trend for the bottom of the list heavily concentrates in South America, parts of the Caribbean Sea, and Africa. So after Venezuela, you have Peru scoring an 8.87 and Gabon at 8.51.
This raises an important question about the compounding nature of risk. When you analyze those high-danger scores, you really have to look at how these different vulnerabilities interact.
What do you mean?
Well, poor infrastructure is just as detrimental to a solo traveler's safety as a high crime rate because they multiply each other. If you are alone in a foreign country and you get sick, and the local hospital system is inaccessible due to poor roads or it lacks basic supplies, you are in immediate life-threatening danger, completely independent of the local crime statistics.
That is such an important distinction, and I want to pause here just to say these are, by and large, incredibly beautiful, culturally vibrant countries.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about places with rich histories and wonderful people, but the specific vulnerability of being alone in a place that is experiencing infrastructural collapse, that is what drives these danger scores up.
Because you're isolated.
Exactly. In a group, you have a built-in support system. Someone can go find a doctor or, navigate a confusing transit delay. But when you are completely solo, a structural failure becomes a personal crisis instantly.
The margin for error practically disappears. Your personal resilience has to make up for the lack of systemic resilience.
So we've zoomed way out to look at global UN indexes and State Department warnings. But when you finally step off that plane, safety isn't a spreadsheet anymore.
No, it's reality.
It comes down to micro, personal choices on the ground. Regardless of whether your destination ranks a 1 or an 8, you have to protect yourself.
Yes.
And the source material actually provides a survival toolkit for solo travelers, broken down into 5 pro tips. So let's take the first one. Tip 1, share your itinerary.
Very important.
You need to let family or friends back home know your exact trip details, like where you're staying, what you plan to see, and make sure your phone plan actually allows you to post updates or send messages while you are out.
It acts as your digital tether to the rest of the world. Because if nobody knows where you're supposed to be, nobody knows when you are missing.
Exactly. Tip number 2, shifts to your physical presence on the street. Walk with confidence.
Yes.
Pickpockets and muggers are opportunists. They are far more likely to target someone who is visibly lost, confused, or, distracted.
Yeah.
So you have to stash your money and your phone securely rather than holding them out in front of you like a beacon.
We're just so common with tourists.
Oh, I'll confess, this is where I usually fail. On my last trip, I got completely turned around trying to find a specific museum, and I definitely stood on a busy street corner just glaring at my Maps app, completely oblivious to my surroundings.
We've all been there.
But the report suggests a brilliant alternative. If you get lost, pop into a local store to check your map in private, or, approach a police officer or a family to ask for directions.
Popping into a shop changed the dynamic completely. You remove yourself from that street-level vulnerability.
Exactly. Okay, tip number 3 is pretty straightforward. Lock up your valuables. Leave the flashy jewelry at home. And if you have large amounts of cash or your original passport, leave them in the hotel safe. You should only carry the exact amount of money and ID you need for that specific outing.
And always, always make a physical copy of your passport and store it in a completely separate bag from the original.
The physical copy, yeah.
It's basic redundancy, but it saves entire trips if your primary bag is stolen.
For sure. All right, tip number 4 is broadly defined as be street savvy. You have to trust your instincts, which professionals call the creep factor.
The creep factor, right.
As the report puts it, No taco joint is worth feeling unsafe. If a street or a venue feels off, just skip it.
Being street savvy also means understanding the local environment before you go out.
Right.
For women in particular, this often means observing local clothing customs, which might involve covering heads, arms, or legs, depending on the country.
It's about blending in and being respectful, too.
Exactly. And universally, any solo traveler should avoid heavy drinking, never hitchhike, and frankly, never leave a location with a stranger.
Your intuition is literally an evolutionary survival mechanism. You have to listen to it.
Always.
The final tip, tip number 5, is to get official alerts. So there is a free service offered by the U.S. government called the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, or STEP.
STEP.
Right. By participating in STEP, you get security announcements from U.S. embassies and consulates wherever you are traveling, sent directly to your phone.
Synthesizing these 5 tips reveals the ultimate exercise in situational awareness and proactive risk mitigation. The goal of this toolkit isn't to make you paranoid.
No, not at all.
It's to empower you. When you have these protocols in place, you can actually relax and enjoy the freedom of that solo trip because you know you've managed the controllable variables.
I love that. It is exactly like setting up a digital firewall for your trip.
A firewall, yeah.
You rely on multiple overlapping layers of protection. You have your itinerary sharing, plus your physical street smarts, plus your secure valuables, plus the official STEP alerts. You layer them on top of each other so that if single failure happens, say your phone dies or your wallet is swiped, it doesn't completely ruin the trip.
Right, the other layers are there to catch you.
Think about your last trip. Which of these layers were you missing? I guarantee almost all of us skip at least one. Usually the administrative ones, like the STEP program or making physical passport copies.
Because people naturally avoid the tasks that require homework before the vacation begins.
Right, you just want to go.
Exactly. But those administrative layers are the exact mechanisms that save you in a true emergency when you are operating without a safety net.
The core thesis here is that solo travel remains one of the most incredible, empowering pleasures you can experience in life. Having total freedom over your itinerary is a joy.
It is.
But achieving that total freedom requires taking total responsibility for your well-being. You have to use the historical data, like the SquareMouth Safety Index, and real-time situational awareness, like the State Department advisories and your own street smarts, to guide your journey.
It demands a perfect balance of statistical preparation and personal vigilance. And, before we wrap up, there is one specific detail from the methodology we discussed earlier that really warrants a deeper reflection.
Oh, really? I'm intrigued. What stood out to you?
Well, one of the core metrics used to rank these 113 countries was the perceived security when walking alone at night. It's a fascinating metric because it bridges the gap between hard data and human psychology.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much of a country's perceived danger is rooted in its actual statistical crime rates versus the psychological design of its cities.
Oh, wow. The design of the city itself.
Exactly. Does the simple presence of good street lighting, wide sidewalks, and thoughtful urban architecture fundamentally alter our baseline survival instincts?
That's wild to think about.
How much of our personal definition of peace is just a reaction to the physical environment we are walking through at any given moment?
That is a brilliant question to leave off on. Is the city actually safe, or does it just feel safe because the street lamps are bright and the sidewalks are wide?
Right.
It really challenges how we define our own comfort zones.
Right.
That is something to definitely mull over the next time you find yourself wandering down an unfamiliar street after dark.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay safe out there, and we will catch you next time.